Hello everyone, I'm Alvarez and this is Alvarez Metalworks. So today what we're doing is we're building some H1 wheels for Project Pathfinder. So flip this over, should have did this before I started the video. So I'll show you the front side. So this right here is a factory 24 bolt paired H1 Humvee wheel that the military uses on the Humvees. This right here is the modified version of this. This is what's going to work on the Pathfinder. This is what I'm doing to this wheel. Okay? Let me start with going over the different versions of Humvee wheels that are out there. This, like I said, is a 24 bolt paired. What I mean by that is every two of these lugs that you're seeing here are slightly closer together, so they're paired up. So the gap between this and this is shorter than the gap between here and here. Okay, so you have a 24 bolt paired, you have a 24 bolt, which is just a standard where they're all equally spaced. You have a 12 bolt where they're all equally spaced, and you have an 8 bolt where they're all equally spaced. These bolts, these lugs that you're seeing here, these are not the lug nuts. These are the lugs that are used to bolt the two halves of the wheels together because they're a two-piece wheel. So, the difference between them all is as the military, you know, their demands went up, and as they started using these wheels, they decided that they wanted to use more and more lug nuts or bolts, lug bolts, to bolt the two halves of the wheels together for strength, and because they initially started out with the 8 lug and there was issues with them leaking. It was a slightly different design than the 12 and the 24 bolt ones. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied, and I'll show you why right now. The 12 and the 24 bolt have your mounting flange, your wheel center, attached to the outside half of the wheel. The 8 bolt has kind of a coned, domed look to it, and the mounting flange is mounted or part of the rear section of the wheel. Okay. What we're doing here in our modification is we will be cutting out this center. Okay, I'll show you in a little bit how we're going to do that, but in the 8 lug, if you guys are working with an 8 lug, essentially it's going to be a real similar process, except for you're cutting it out of the rear section versus, you know, the face of the wheel. So let me put this back on. Let me stand this wheel on its side so we can show you guys the concept and the principle behind the two-piece wheel. These are a 16.5 inch wheel, which is very uncommon nowadays. It's something that was used way back in the day. I'm not entirely sure why they chose to use a 16.5. The bead of the tire is significantly different than a standard wheel. A standard wheel tire size, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever, where the bead sits on the wheel is completely flat. And there's usually a ridge right on the inside of the bead, so when you mount the tire, it pops over that ridge, shoves up against the outside lip of the wheel, and sits flat in there. That ridge keeps the bead from, you know, popping off real easy. With a 16.5, you have an angled bead. Okay, there's no lip here to keep the tire from popping off. It's just air pressure, solely just air pressure that's pushing the tire up against the outside of the wheel. The problem with that is that when 16.5 inch tires would start to run low on air, there was a tendency for the beads to pop, which means the tire is pushing itself off the wheel. You're losing air. A lot of issues with them in regards to that. Why does the military use a 16.5 if there's issues? Quite simple. These are beadlock wheels. These are beadlocks and run flats. they have an insert inside the tire. And this is the purpose behind the two-piece wheel. You have the tire, and I'll show you guys a still image. I don't have the insert here, and I don't have the aftermarket insert, which we'll talk about in a quick second. But basically, it's a rubber insert. Your bead of the tire sits here. You have this big rubber insert that sits in between that bead and this other bead. With the military application, it has like kind of like a mohawk looking thing all the way around it. That is the run flat feature. What that is it's just a big hard piece of rubber that stands off here, so if you lose air pressure and your tire starts to run flat, it will never ride on the wheel. It's going to ride on that rubber mohawk, for lack of a better description. Now, this rubber insert is kind of thick, you know. It's probably, if I had to guess, because I don't have one on hand, I would say it's about 3/4 of an inch thick this way. And it fits snugly up against the beads of the tire. So you shove it inside the tire, then you split the two wheels in half, you put it onto the rear section of the wheel, the tire, the mohawk insert, run flat insert, whatever you want to call it, and then you place the outside section of the wheel on there and you bolt the two halves together. There's also a seal that goes in here too. Okay. Here's one. There's different styles for the different types of wheels, but that's one. That's what keeps the air from leaking out the two pieces of the wheel, or the two halves of the wheels. But when you're bolting the two halves of the wheels together, that rubber insert, that run flat, smashes the bead of the tire up against the lip of the wheel. And that's what creates a double bead lock. Not just a standard bead lock, which only locks the outside edge of the wheel, but it creates a double bead lock because it's pinching it. It's really, really durable, really, really effective. And that's why the military uses it. Without that insert, yes, a 16.5 inch tire, 16.5 inch wheel is going to have issues with airing down and running off-road. With that insert, however, it becomes a great benefit to those of us that are off-roading, and that's why I'm using this wheel. I personally will probably try to get a hold of some of the military run flat inserts for a set of street tires. But then I have just ordered some PVC inserts. And what they are is just some large PVC tubing that people are cutting down to work as an insert. You lose the run flat feature, but it's okay because those of us that are off-roading, we want the tire to run really, really low air pressure and contour around things. That's the reason why we need a double bead lock to keep our tire on the wheel. So I will probably be running both types, one for the street, one for off-roading. I've got 8 of these wheels. So with that being said, let's take a look at the back of this thing, and we're going to show you how I'm going to cut the center out, okay? I'm going to steal a video clip that I had done, and one of my first videos on my channel was cutting the centers out of this. So I'm going to steal a section of that video of me actually doing that work, because there's no sense in doing it twice. Essentially, I'm going to take one bolt here, bolt the two halves of the wheels together, okay? Then I'm going to flip this on its face, and I'm going to use this lip from the lip of the rear wheel to guide my plasma cutter tip all the way around, cutting out the center, okay? There's other ways you can do this. You know, the most precise way is to use a mill. You set up the wheel in the mill, and you use the mill to cut out the center. You could use a good lathe as well to cut out the center. Those are going to be your most precise ways. What I'm doing works. I've done it for somebody else. A lot of people build these wheels. It works. The thing you need to understand though is these things are not going to ever be perfectly balanced. These are used military wheels. they've beaten the hell out of them. I can tell some of them have little bits of bends in them and stuff like that. So they're not perfect. They're super, super heavy. They're going to be difficult to balance. You just have to understand that and be ready for it. Okay. So with that being said, let me show you guys that video clip of me cutting the center. Okay, so now that we've cut the center, and I showed you guys how to cut the center. Obviously I haven't cut the center out of this one. I'm going to show you guys the new wheel center that we're putting in. Now there's a few different types on the market. This is a stamped steel insert. Okay, there's some very important information I need to give you guys regarding these stamped steel inserts. There is only one offset that you can have with these stamped steel inserts. Okay, they're very thick for the most part, depends on the company you go through, but they're very thick, very, very strong. Just one of the strongest designs for a wheel center option out there. Now there is companies that build flat wheel centers that are 1/4 inch wall or 1/4 inch thick plate, which, you know, are really strong. They use them on rock balancers, things like that, and they beat the snot out of them, so they have to hold up. Those ones allow you to adjust your back spacing pretty significantly, whereas these stamped steel ones do not. Okay, every website that I've run across, the stamped steel ones claim to have a 3.5 inch offset. Okay, the 3.5 inch offset is actually for your 8 lug bolt pattern. As you go smaller in your bolt pattern, your offset is actually, or your back spacing is actually more shallow. So for the 6 lug that I have, the GM, Toyota, Nissan bolt pattern, the 6 on, what is it, 6 on 5.5? Something like that. It's actually 2 7/8 back spacing. Okay, so if you guys are doing this and you need more back spacing than and you need a 6 lug pattern, you need more than 2 7/8, you better be looking at an 8 lug 1-ton axle setup so you can get the 3.5, or you better go look for the flat inserts so that you can get more back spacing out of them. So this actually works for my setup. It scared the hell out of me when I first discovered that, but it'll work. So flipping this wheel over again, we'll take that out of there. I'll show you guys how this works. First things first, this military paint is not going to come off with aircraft stripper. This is super strong stuff. It's very toxic. You're gonna want, when it comes to cleaning this off, if you do it yourself, I really don't recommend you do it yourself. I would send it off to chemical strippers to get them all stripped down. Sandblasting is going to take forever, trust me. Chemical stripping is the way to do these. If you're stubborn, you want to do it yourself, make sure you do it outside. Make sure you're wearing a really good quality respirator. Talk to 3M. Make sure you got the right filters that you're using. Don't just use a dust mask. This can cause you some problems. Okay. Make sure you get this entire section here cleaned out, and preferably the backside of the studs and the lugs area, because once this wheel center is in here, you're never going to be able to get in there to clean that up for paint. So do it now. Okay, now with these press centers, they're actually really easy unless your wheel is bent. Okay, once the paint is cleaned out of there, they're going to go in as far as they can go in. Okay, you're still going to want to make sure that it's not cockeyed at all. The better that wheel center is in there, the better your wheels are going to roll down the road or roll down the trail. I suggest putting a flat edge across here, measuring here and here. Once you know that it's about right, put a tack into place, put that flat edge across here, measure, measure. When you know it's about right, put a couple more tacks in there and kind of work your way around. Be real patient with it. An eighth of an inch is a huge problem. It'll cause your wheel to start wobbling down the road. So be real patient with that. Okay. I'll show you what that looks like welded up in just a second. We'll flip this over, get this out of my way. And we'll show you the rock ring first, and then we'll show you the completed wheel. So here's the rock ring. There is a slew of companies out there that build these things, okay? The company who built these, I don't know that they're in existence anymore. I don't even know the name of them. A buddy of mine, one of the admins on my club forum, upstate4x4.com, he had purchased them, a couple years ago or so from an independent, fabricator. And the guy never came through on sending them to him. So he went out and bought a whole nother set of rock rings, built his wheels. A year after his order, all of a sudden these things showed up in the mail. So he asked me if I wanted them, and I bought them. I've got 6 of them. I need to get them replicated so I can get 2 more for the other set of wheels that I have. But essentially what we're dealing with here is 1/4-inch plate that's put on a CNC plasma table, water jet, laser cutter, and they're cutting out different patterns, okay? These things sit inside the lip of the wheel. I will take you off the tripod to give you a better look at that, just like so. It is possible for them to be in there slightly crooked. When you're welding them, it's flat plate, it's going to want to warp a little bit. So what I did was I used a clamped from the bottom side of the wheel to here, got myself a tack, jumped to the other side of the wheel, got myself a tack, jumped here, and just did a bunch of crisscrossing with the clamp and the tack welding to make sure that it was pushed down evenly. Okay? And I will show you some of the welding in just a second. Okay, so I didn't show you guys a lot of details in the work that was being done. I'm trying to shorten up the video a little bit, and you guys got to see that I actually did build the wheel myself. So that's good enough. Let's start with looking at the back of this thing. These things are very heavy now. Again, I used a straight edge, you know, crisscross straight edge, measured from the lip of the wheel center to across, made sure it was good, tack, tack, measured across this way, tack, tack, and then I came back through here, and over the tack I put a 2-inch weld, 2-inch weld, 2-inch weld, 2-inch weld. Then went, you know, to here, 2-inch weld, 2-inch weld, 2-inch weld, 2-inch weld. Basically a star pattern, the way you tighten up lug nuts. At that point, my gaps between there were kind of small, so I just went through and went around and welded them up. It's really important to try to jump around initially until your gaps get kind of tight, because it's metal and it's going to warp. There's a lot of heat involved with this. Your amperage is up pretty high on your welder so that you can weld this thicker metal. So jump around, take your time with it, make sure everything's good to go. The straighter the wheel, the better. So flipping this over, let's take you off the tripod, let you look at the finish here. So again, this is all ground down. I could have left the weld there, but I really like the way that looks. It's not super precision perfect, but it's clean. I like that look a lot better than having that welded lip there. That's why I did that the way I did. And it's all preference, it's up to you. Even shitty welds on the rock ring are going to be probably plenty fine. So with that being said, one thing that I want to tell you guys about, because I know there's a number of people out there that don't run rock rings on these H1 wheels, and they don't have problems, and some of them do. If you're not running a rock ring on here, the studs that bolt the two halves of the wheels are very, very vulnerable to rocks, trees, or any stuff on the trail that can damage the threads on those studs. Anybody who's ever had to replace studs on a car knows that it's a pain in the ass. Imagine tearing a whole bunch of them up on your wheels and you have to deal with that. So rock ring protects those, but it also protects your valve stem. On these particular wheels, I'm going to be using a metal valve stem that's bent. I believe it's at a 22-degree angle. Don't quote me on that. But it comes up. The valve stem hole is actually right here. It comes up inside of the valve, or inside of the rock ring, so that I could just twist off the cap here and then air it up there. Some of the rock rings have cutouts for them where you can access it. I prefer to have the longer bent valve stem and have the rock ring stay consistent, because number one, not all air chucks and things are going to be able to access the valve stem through the rock ring properly, and you may have headaches with that. If you run it up in between the two flanges here, you're never going to have an issue with being able to access your valve stem. Plus it's symmetric, you know, the rock ring will stay symmetrical. So with that being said, that's basically it. You know, if you guys have any questions, you know, ask me in the comment section. I hope you learned something from this video. I know it's been a long time since I actually put a work video out for you guys. I'm going to try to get this truck done before October, or at least before an event in October. Street worthy. I'm hoping to be able to drive it by then. Probably not going to be done by then, but I'm hoping to be able to drive it on the road. So thank you guys for watching. Like always, subscribe, comment, like. Make sure to check out RourkeSupply.com. They're a huge support of my channel. They're going to support you by giving you 10% off anything that you order from them by using coupon code METAL. Okay? If you call them, you have any questions about stuff on their website or things that maybe they don't have, call them up. They may be able to get it for you. That coupon code is still good. Ask them to use it. So, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later.